All right, last week we began the book of Ruth, which last week was the story of Naomi. And Naomi was an old lady who had a husband, she had a couple of sons, and there was a famine in the land of Israel, so they left Israel, they left Bethlehem, which means house of bread, and they went to the land of Moab so they could sojourn there and be able to eat and have a life. But her husband died. Her firstborn son died. Her secondborn son died. She had nothing left except for her two daughters-in-law. And the question that we must always ask ourselves when we read stories like this or when we hear stories like this is, what would I do in this situation? Some of you have had really tough trials in your lives. Some of you only think you've had tough trials in your lives. She lost her entire family. She lost her spouse. She lost all of her children. She had no family left. And if you were in this situation, what would you be feeling? What would you be ascribing to God? Now, there is a good, right, perfect answer. And then there's probably the more realistic answer. But I think, and I've said this before, I think it's really important that when things are good, when our lives are good, to challenge ourselves and ask the question, what would I do if I was in this situation? If I've lost everything? Would I take the advice of Job's wife and curse God and die? Naomi last week definitely was blaming God. She said, the hand of Yahweh has gone out against me. He's doing it. Now, she doesn't necessarily say whether she deserves it or not. That's always the first question we could ask. Am I living a life of sin? Is there a reason why I'm being disciplined? Or is it just I'm like Naomi or just like Job? And it has been permitted to the demonic realm, the chance, the whatever you want to say, and these bad things are happening. And can I have the wisdom, can I have the grace to say that the Lord gives in times of great times, and the Lord takes away in those times of terrible times? Yet blessed be the name of the Lord. I'm not sure Naomi ever got a clear view of everything from, let's say God's perspective, but she did see good things, as we'll see today. Job did have the door opened up, the veils taken away, so to speak, as we read the story, and the voice of God comes down and starts talking to Job and the four friends and says, hey, guys, are you questioning me? Do you really know how the universe works? Do you know the future? Do you know completely the past? Trust me. And that really, at the end of the day, becomes the question. I see what's happening right now. It seems really, really bad, really awful. But the question I have to ask myself is, do I trust God? If he takes my wife, if he takes all my children, what will Eric do? I know what I should say. I know what I should do. And I like to think I would do pretty well. But until you're in the midst of it with all the overwhelming emotions, you just don't know for sure. But we know the right answer. And we can relate we can relate somewhat with Naomi when she says, the hand of the Lord's gone out against me. My husband is dead. My sons are dead. I have nothing but my 2 daughters-in-law. And I think speaks to her character that after they hear that there's food again in Israel, the famine is over, and she heads back to Israel, and she's going there with Ruth and Orpah. She stops on the road and says, I love the company. I love you girls. But I can't do that to you. I can't keep you with me. You girls are young. You're beautiful. I assume it doesn't say that. Go back to your parents' house and get remarried. Find new husbands. You come with me and there's just nothing. I'm old. I got nothing left to give you. I certainly can't give you any new sons and therefore husbands. And so, as I said, I think this speaks to the character of Naomi, that she pushed them away. It was the right thing to do, is what Naomi was thinking. I'm sure, like I said, she loved the company in Israel. What's that saying? Misery loves company. But she didn't do that. And Orpah took her advice and said, You're right. I'm going to go. I love you dearly. And she heads back to Moab. She heads back to mom and dad's, hopefully to find another husband. And Ruth does not. Ruth says, I forsake it all for you, Naomi. I forsake my people. I forsake my land. I forsake my family. I forsake my gods. And Naomi, your people will be my people, and your family will be my family, and your gods will be my gods, and your land, my land. And that's, as I said last week, quite a change, quite a conversion. She swore her life to Naomi, and of course that brought good things. There's a Hebrew word I did not use last week, and it really is the theme of this book. And that's chesed. If you've never heard of it, doesn't really have a one-word translation into English. If I were to use 2 words and kind of cheat a little bit, the most common translation would be something like loving kindness. Loving kindness, this idea of sacrificial love, where I am going to give up anything and everything just to help you out, to show you my love. And Ruth did this. She gave up absolutely everything for Naomi. Now, do you think she did that because Naomi was a mean mother-in-law, a nasty person, subpar character? I suppose the answer is no. I suspect Naomi had a great character that caused her daughters-in-law to truly love her. And so once again, I guess I'm going back to application is, what is your character like? And are you truly a light to the world, a light to the nations, where somebody says, I love you so much. What is it that you have? I want that. Because you are an amazing person. And what you have, I want that. Because your life seems so wonderful somehow. Of course, on the outside, Naomi's life did not look good. My grandfather told me a story a long time ago that about 100 years ago, I had some ancestors, 100 years ago, I can't really call those ancestors, but around the 1920s, they took in a young man who was, let's say, around 20 years old, and he lived with them. He was totally down and out and had nothing. And they invited him in. He lived with them for a year or 2. And by the time he left, he was so transformed and so changed, he went to the courthouse and changed his last name to be Muley, to be the same as theirs. He says, I want you guys. I want to be part of your family. You just don't hear those kinds of stories. You don't hear about the Naomis and the Ruths. Be the kind of person that others are drawn to. Ultimately, not because you're so incredibly amazing and have that charisma, but you redirect their gaze to the Father, to Yeshua. So Ruth and Naomi, again, I guess I'm still in last week, they arrive back at Bethlehem, and Naomi sees all of her old friends, and they say, "Hey, Naomi." She says, "Stop, don't call me Naomi. Don't call me pleasant. I'm so bitter. Call me Mara. For Shaddai is against me. Yahweh is against me." And they get there, if you recall, at the beginning of the barley harvest. So the next day, Ruth, we start to find out a little bit more about her character. We already know she's loyal, she's faithful, she's committed to Naomi, but she gets up the next morning and says, "Hey, I'm going to work." And she doesn't say, "Naomi, do you want to come with me?" She just says, "I'm going to work." And you have the little town of Bethlehem. And the way it would work is the fields obviously were around the town, around the city. And she just randomly walked to a field to start gleaning, to start working, to start getting some food, something to eat for she and Naomi. And by chance, by good fortune, by great luck, good pagan words right there, but we'll change that in a little bit. She lands at Boaz's property, his field, and she begins to glean. She doesn't know who Boaz is. And Boaz sees her and learns about her, that she is the one who's been loyal and faithful to Naomi. And then sees that she's a hard worker. And then we find out more about Boaz. And Boaz is the one who becomes known as being generous. He's a man of worthy character. And says to Ruth, "Don't go in any other fields. Stay in my fields. Glean. And hey, young men who are working out there, would you drop some stuff for her?" And he buys her lunch. So then she goes home, and she brings home 29 pounds of grain, which we saw last week was just an astronomical amount. And Naomi says, "Well, where in the world were you today?" And she says, "I was in the field of a man named Boaz, and he bought me lunch, and look at all he gave me." And now Naomi shares, "Oh, Ruth, you have no idea. This is family. This is a kinsman redeemer. He is a good man." And so Ruth, stays working in Boaz's field through the barley harvest and through the wheat harvest, as we see through the end of chapter 2. And so we pick up at chapter 3 today, starting at verse 1. It says, "Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, 'My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?'" So what is she doing? She's trying. Naomi, this woman of character, she herself, and this character that drew Ruth to her, is looking after her and says, "I need to look after you, Ruth. I need to provide for you. Here's the plan. Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor." So the towns would have a threshing floor, which was, it was a flat place with some low walls and no roof. And they would scoop up the grains, and here they're doing barley. So we're through the barley harvest, and it sounds like we're through the wheat harvest. So they probably let it dry out a bit, and then they would take it and they throw it up in the air. And the idea is the wind would come and blow the husks off of the grains, as though the grains would fall down, and that's what you wanted to keep. And so Naomi continues, "Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor, but don't make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies, then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." Scandalous. Can you believe this? Uncover his feet. Now, we kind of laugh at this today. It's like, what is the big deal? You peeled back the covers, you saw his toes, and then you lay down, and okay, now what? And Ruth replies, Naomi, all that you say, I will do. But what's Ruth feeling? What is she thinking? She knows this is momentous. And as I said, I think this was scandalous. I don't mean in a sexual way, but it could have been. How's it going to go? Is Boaz going to wake up and say, Ruth, what on? I don't think so. Get away. Or is it going to go the way that Naomi is planning, that they will get married? So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet, and she lay down. At midnight, the man was startled, and he turned over, and behold, a woman was lying at his feet. He said, Who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. What in the world does it mean to spread your wings over me? Well, the word in Hebrew for the corner of your clothing, the corner of your garment, the corner of your blanket is wing. It's the same word for wing. But I love how at least the ESV, and maybe your translation does as well, does put the word wing there. In chapter 2, verse 12, where Boaz is blessing Ruth. And he says, The Lord repay you for what you have done for Naomi, and a full reward be given to you by Yahweh, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. So what it sounds like Ruth is doing is, Boaz, put your wings over me. Just as you have blessed me by saying, may Yahweh cover you with his wings. In other words, Boaz, you have the ability to fulfill your prayer. Be covered by the wings to protect and to provide. Spread your wings, for you are a redeemer. You're a kinsman redeemer. Now, let me talk a bit about this in a second. So let's say it is the blanket or the corner of the garment. How do we know this is a picture of marriage? How do we know that Ruth just proposed to Boaz? Boaz, will you marry me? In Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 8, God says, When I passed by you, Israel, and saw you, behold, you were at the age for love. And I spread the corner or the wing of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. I made my vow to you and entered into a covenant with you, declares the Lord God, and you became mine. So the idea of saying, let me cover you with the edge of my garment or the edge of my blanket is essentially saying, I will marry you, or will you marry me? This was a marriage proposal. Verse 10, Boaz says, May you be blessed by Yahweh, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. What was the first kindness? Yeah, Naomi. He's going back again to chapter 2, and he sees this amazing woman who is caring for this old woman she has no responsibility for, but she chose to do it, and she committed her life to doing it. And Boaz is, I think, overwhelmed with Ruth and her character. And now he's overwhelmed even more by saying that this is a greater kindness than what you're doing for Naomi. This is greater. Now, as I said last week, and I guess I did a little bit ago as well, the story of Ruth never says that she is a beautiful woman. It focuses on her character. She is hardworking and she is loyal. In Genesis, we see that Rachel's beautiful. We see that Sarah is beautiful. We have descriptions of beautiful women. So we don't necessarily know that Ruth is. But I think, and I wonder, and maybe in this passage here, maybe she is beautiful. And Boaz has truly always been smitten with her since she showed up. She could have chased after younger men. You know, a poor man, I suppose, means that she was in love with him, and so she didn't marry for that love. Or maybe he's really good looking, so she didn't marry for good looks. And of course, rich, it speaks for itself. Although I suspect Boaz also is rich. But he says, you came to me. And as we mentioned last week, I suspect he's at least 20 years older than her, maybe 30 years older than her. He calls her daughter, and he seems to be of the generation of Elimelech and Naomi. And thus, that's why he says, you didn't chase after the younger men. Verse 11, and now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. Story's over. They're getting married. Look. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. Oh, why is he marrying her? He does not say you are a beautiful woman. She still could be. Everybody knows you, Ruth, are a woman of character. And now it is true that I am a redeemer. However, or that fateful but, dun, 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 there is a redeemer nearer than I. So there's a plot twist in our story. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, as Yahweh lives, I will redeem you. What did Boaz just do? Made a vow. He gave her away. He says, wow, I really want to marry you, but this guy gets the choice first. And if he marries you, what did he say? He said, good. Well, I think he said good because you will be taken care of. Naomi will be taken care of. He recognizes that's the goal here. But then he says, as Yahweh lives, I will marry you. I swear on the life of my God. Can you go against what you just swore if you make that vow? Well, the correct answer is no, even though people break their vows all the time. That was the strongest vow you can make. So then he continues, lie down until the morning. That must have been a long night. I don't know. What were they thinking? What were they thinking through the night? It's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get married. Am I going to get married? I'm going to be Boaz. Is it this other guy? And Boaz is thinking, am I really going to be able to marry this young lady? She's so beautiful. She's so awesome. She's touching my toes. So she lay down at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor this night. So I imagine they weren't alone. You guys hopefully gathered that picture that there's a lot of people at the threshing floor. This was the threshing floor that they all used. And so he's telling the other men, they're saying, hey, don't tell people about this. He said to Ruth, bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then she went into the city. Now, why did he do that? Why did he say, hold out your garment? And what kind of measures? I mean, it actually doesn't say in the Hebrew. He just says he put 6 barleys in her garment. So, 6 little grains of barley. Well, probably what happened is this culture just knew what kind of measurement it would have been. 6, there's only one measurement that would have gone into a garment. But we're so far gone from this, it doesn't say. We don't know. It could have been he just put, 6 scoops real quick in there. It could have been 6 seahs. But the point is, she got a good amount and she carried it back home. Now, again, why did he do it? I suspect that this is all part of the explanation, the disguise, there's a better word, the disguise to get Ruth out of there back to Naomi without anyone thinking, what was she doing there? Rather, they're going to see, oh, she's got a sack full of grain. She's, of course, getting food for she and Naomi. Now, the other possible explanation that I actually don't like it too much, but that it's an impromptu dowry, an impromptu bride price, if you will. And there's a possibility that's correct. I don't know. The reason why I don't like it though is I think on it's actually an obligation on his part. The Redeemer is to take in a levirate marriage to marry the wife of his brother. Is usually how the Torah describes it. It's like, okay, well, my brother died. He had no children, so now I take his wife and I raise up a child for him. It just happens. There's not the normal procedure of, oh, here's a bride price, etc. No, that's already taken place. She's already in the family. Bring the garment, verse 16. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did it fare, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. What does Naomi know about Boaz? He's a man of character. He has integrity. He said he's going to take care of it. Oh, you don't know Boaz. He will take care of it, and it will be done quickly. All right, comments and questions about chapter 3 of Ruth. Comments. All right, we'll start there with Cheryl, and then go over to Russ.
Okay, so my question is, because Greg and I were talking about how Tamar was also a woman that had to be passed on to the brother of her deceased husband. And so fast forward in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, the one that she was passed on to did something bad and he was killed, and happened again to the second brother and did something bad and he was killed. I wonder if maybe the husband of Naomi had died because a Moabite is not supposed to be taken in marriage into the household of Israel. Yeah. So maybe Abba had terminated him because he had broken that agreement. And then, of course, the sons going along with it, marrying Moabites, were then killed for that sake. Okay, the reason I'm mentioning that is because technically Boaz should be in that same scenario if that was the case. Yeah. But prior to the trip to Bethlehem, she made a vow renouncing her people, her gods of her youth. And so then that would nullify any connection she had to them. So is that possibly the reason why Boaz was not potentially terminated?
Executed.
Again, this is speculation.
Yeah. It's a tough one. We did look at that passage in Deuteronomy last week. There it is, Deuteronomy 23:3. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they didn't provide you with bread and water on your trip from Egypt. Now, the Egyptians are allowed to come into Israel. They can join the assembly. I think they have to wait 10 generations, then they are allowed to. But my question is, does the Egyptian have to forsake his gods and people in order to come in? And I suspect the answer is yes. You can't have both the God of Israel and the gods of Egypt. That regardless of whatever your people group is, was, or are, you have to renounce that if you want to join and become part of the assembly of Israel. So I don't think an adequate explanation for the Moabite is, well, the Deuteronomy 23 command is only for those Moabites who don't reject their past, their culture, etc. I think it actually is a timeless command that the Moabites and the Ammonites were never allowed to come in. So what do we do with Ruth then? So I guess get back to your question: was Elimelech wrong in getting these daughters for his sons? And I say, well, yeah, I think he was. Was Kilian and Machlon, were they wrong to accept the bribes? It's like, well, yeah, I suspect it was wrong. Is he the one who killed them? I don't know. As you said, we're speculating. We can't tell. Or is it just they just happened to die? And we just don't know because the story does not comment on it. And I don't think the names help either. Sometimes we can look at the names. What's the name of the guy in 1 Samuel whose name means fool? Nabal, right? So, his wife, Abigail, says, my husband's a fool. Man, look at his name. We get some insight there. But one of the main points of the Bible is that God breaks the meanings of names. He breaks our history. When we were going through Romans a couple of weeks ago, we saw that there was a guy named Apollos, and he was now a follower of Christ. We saw there was a man named Hermes, and he's now a follower of Christ, and yet they were named after pagan gods. They didn't change their names. The point is, the blood of Christ, the power of God to redeem, and this is a story of redemption, takes care of all that. At the end of the day, I suspect, yes, Elimelech and the boys were wrong to do this. Did they die as a punishment? I don't know. What about Boaz? Again, I think he's doing the right thing. Judging from the story and the fruit that comes of it, right? We get to chapter 4, we find out all this leads to King David. We don't see judgment. So perhaps a long question or long answer to a long question, but do you have a follow-up? Well, let's okay. You got it? Okay, yeah, we'll let her do a follow-up.
You're more than welcome to answer this later, but Obed, does he ever say that he is the prodigy of the
Elimelech?
Yes.
I don't know. I could do a quick search in my Bible software, but I'm not sure. It's usually ascribed to Boaz. Why does it ascribe it to Boaz, though? Because this whole story is about chesed, which means loving kindness and people of character. And so Boaz has that. Ruth has that. And they come together, and Obed is the fruit of the union. So, yes, technically it is a son of Elimelech, as we're going to see in chapter 4. It calls it the son of Naomi. But at the end of the day, they can't ever stop saying Boaz because, man, Boaz is a man of character. And this is amazing, and praise the Lord.
Yeah, a quick comment to add to that. I think, the fact that the difference between Boaz and the men who, left and died is that they were in the time of judges, Israel's being cursed. And so rather than focus on repentance and the blessings and cursings of Torah, they jump ship and say, we want to go where it's better. Those Moabites maybe it's more blessed over there and better
food.
farming. And so they marry unbelievers, so to speak. What fellowship does believers have with unbelievers? But the great story is that, Ruth comes to faith, and it's very much like Boaz's mother, who was Rahab, the harlot of Jericho. And so he's seeing that she's grafting in, she's renouncing. And so she sees the same parallelism that he had, and maybe he was under a lot of heat not being an actual Israelite. A lot of people, you're not a native. So Boaz, there's no evidence of him being married. Maybe the fact that he's there alone, sleeping alone, is the indication that he wasn't married at the time to anybody else, or if he was, the author doesn't want to bring into that topic of polygamy, just bring out all the positiveness of this story. And another Hebrew phrase is gamzula tova. That's what rabbis say today. In the worst of trials, it's very parallel to Romans 8:28, is everything works out for good in the end.
For those who love God.
For those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And the story really brings it out.
Yeah, good, thanks. Let's go to chapter 4. All right, now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, turn aside, friend, sit down here. And he turned aside, and he sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, you sit down here. So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, actually, hold on a second. What's the name of the Redeemer? No name. Then he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it, and I come after you." And he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." Then the Redeemer said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it." He has a change of heart. He changes his mind. At first, he thinks, "I'll do the right thing. I'll do it well. I'll get the land. I realize I'll take Naomi in, but Naomi, she can't have kids, so there's no threat." But then, again, a little of a plot twist for him is Boaz says, "You will also acquire Ruth to continue that name." So the right thing to do, of course, would be that he did marry Ruth, but he chose not to. Why? Well, I think it comes down to, if he has a son through Ruth, part of his inheritance would go to Elimelech through the child to Ruth. And at the end of the day, not enough will be left for his own kids. And so what are you saying? If I use plain English, I can't afford it. I can't afford that. So you do it. You marry her. But let me ask the question again. What's the name of this guy? Does it say? It just keeps calling him the Redeemer, when in fact he's not redeeming. Now, the purpose of being a redeemer is what? In levirate marriage, it's to build up the name of your brother. So he's refusing to perpetuate the name of his brother, and the story is taking away his name. It won't give him the name. It just calls him the Redeemer, even though he's not doing it. It's a little ironic. You're the Redeemer, but you won't redeem. You're not doing your title. You're not fulfilling your role. You have no chesed. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one took off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So, because the narrator is telling us this, it's the second time in the story. The first time it was in the days of the judges. Now he's saying, in the days of the judges, they used to take off sandals and exchange them when they made an agreement. So here the Redeemer is going to take off his shoe and hand it to Boaz, which essentially is saying, I am surrendering my responsibility and my right to redeem the property and Ruth. Verse 8, so when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," he took off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "You are witnesses this day that I have purchased from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Kilian, and all that belonged to Machlon. Also, Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Machlon, I have purchased to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day." All right, chapter 4 is taking place over, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour. We're getting a lot of detail. Why are we getting a lot of detail? Well, I suspect it's really making a case of this is being done properly. All the legal pieces are there, and there's no need to question anything. This is the way it came about. Now he says, "I purchased Ruth." That sounds like slave language, but rather I think it's just a technical term to say, I have acquired the duty to perpetuate the name through Ruth for Elimelech. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. Again, why is the story of Ruth written? And I gave two possible reasons last week. I said if it's written after the exile, It's in response to Ezra and Nehemiah, who said, divorce your foreign wives. And some of them are saying, well, no, what about this? And they write the story of Ruth and say, look, David, our great king. Or more likely, at least according to my opinion, it's written around the time of King Solomon. And it's to point to David's pious origins, but also maybe to explain his non-pure blood. So what are the applications from the story of Ruth? We looked at the purpose, these two possible purposes of why it was written. But if we take it home and we say, how do I change me from this story? Because, wow, I want to be a Boaz or I want to be a Ruth. And all we've seen in this story is chesed, this sacrificial love, this loving kindness that I shouldn't, worldly speaking, give to these other people, but I'm doing it. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get blessing from God in this life, but wow, they got blessing from God in this life. And perhaps that is the strongest and best application we can draw. Secondly, we talked about our behavior during trials. Come on, who here has had a trial? Who here has had a trial that you weren't sure you're going to survive through it, emotionally survive through it? Ruth, the story of Ruth is here. When you are in your trials, we always think of Job, but remember Ruth as well. And take encouragement. God is not in the story of Ruth. What I mean by that is he's not a character. He doesn't have a role. There's no prophet that comes and said, here's the will of the Lord or the word of the Lord. Or like in Job, God doesn't just show up and start talking. And so it's good to know both Ruth and Job so that we are in those trials. We can say and remind ourselves that he is right here. And the question we ask ourselves is, do I trust you? You brought up Romans 8:28. Do I trust you that you will bring good from this? My son, my husband is dead. My sons are dead. All my kids are dead. I don't know how you can bring good from this. I trust you. I trust you. Or like Job. Yes, the Lord gives so much. He's so generous. And sometimes the Lord takes it all away. And at the end, I say, I don't want to say it, but I must say it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And you do it. We do it. We must do it. And that's why these books are here. It's a story of reminder for us that he is here with us to comfort us, to strengthen us, and so we can see the bigger picture. We only live in the moment. We can kind of remember some of the past. We can't see the future. But if we could look at the Job and we'll look at the Naomi, we could take comfort and say, okay, all right, you help them out. You know the big picture. I trust you. I trust you. And then the third application, again, the narrator never even really talks about God. We get some comments about Shaddai and Yahweh in here. But the question becomes how is God involved in our day-to-day lives? How do we know something that happens was, did God cause that to happen, or was it chance? Was it good luck? Was it fortune or happenstance? And so I think we should really be careful to not call God's providence those things. God's providential blessings in our lives, don't call it chance or coincidence or fortune or good luck. Oh, Boaz's field. That was amazing. All I did was flip a coin. I ended up here. I love this coin. The chance of Ruth going to the field. But at the same time, God doesn't do everything for you. Yes, he worked it out that Ruth went to Boaz's field. But Ruth still had to glean through the whole barley harvest, through the whole wheat harvest, so that Boaz could see her character. It wasn't just, hey, show up, you're my redeemer. Oh yeah, I'll redeem you. She worked hard. And then she had to go to the threshing floor and uncover his feet. Boaz, marry me. And she's scared. She's nervous. She did it. The good things that happen in our lives, those are all from God. John the Baptist says in John chapter 3, verse 27, John says, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given him from God. Not a single thing is yours unless God gives it to you. Don't say, I got that by my strong right arm, as they would say in the Old Testament. Don't ever take credit. It's always from heaven or from God. And then James says the same thing. James chapter 1, verse 17, he says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Don't you dare give credit to chance or good luck or good fortune. Give your thanks and praise to God. The time. Are there any last quick comments or questions? All right, Caden.
Okay, I have a comment or a question, but first Bridget asks, do you see the book of Ruth being a picture or future prophecy of Yeshua redeeming the Gentiles?
So amazing. Who can redeem somebody? Who could redeem Ruth? Simeon, Benjamin, Joseph. Even Boaz says, I am not the one. There's somebody before me. Our kinsman redeemer is who? But Yeshua had to have the authority. He had to be in the position to do it. It couldn't just be anybody. It had to be the right person. He was the one who was able to do it, not just for Israel, but also for the Gentiles. The kinsman redeemer, where he was the one to go to the cross and redeem us, purchase us, just as Ruth was purchased by Boaz. That was the word that was in there. And we have been purchased by Yeshua, who is our kinsman. He is our redeemer. And so, yes, it is a picture of that. Wow. Intentionally, that's the question. What was the intention of whoever wrote the story of Ruth? But definitely it is layered in there, and I think it works. So thank you, Bridget. You have another one?
Just for myself, though, that's okay.
Sure.
So the point of Boaz redeeming Ruth was that legally the son is Naomi's or Machlon's, Elimelech's.
Yeah.
And then we have the parallel with Judah and Tamar. So those sons are legally heirs, right? Or also Judah's, because he's also it's legally heirs, because that's who he was Tamar was trying to redeem. But in the genealogies in the Gospels and later on, we see it usually doesn't attribute as the legal father of Perez and his twin that I can't remember, and it doesn't give Elimelech as the legal father of Obed. And I understand that is trying to highlight, look how awesome Boaz is, or remember the story of Judah and Tamar when it skips over the legal father and it states the biological father. But I wonder, doesn't that
right
undo what the point is?
Point
is that the Boaz is like, it's not my son, and then every time we ever mention it again, it's like we treat it as if this is Boaz's son, and it was for Boaz. And so I feel like there's tension there. Like
I agree.
The effects.
And I agree, and I've thought about that as well. And I think it's because it wants to remind us of the stories, right? And it wants us to remind us of the character of the people in the stories. Your name is memorialized. So it's all about names, right? This whole story is about names. But the point of the story ends up being how you get a good name is through your character. At the end of the day, it's through your character not just because you took so and so as your wife to perpetuate the name. What does the proverb say? A good name is better than great riches.
Bridget's question too. I was thinking one thing that stood out to me when you were teaching on chapter 4 was that, so in addition to you describing how it could be a picture of Yeshua redeeming the Gentiles, but also Ruth and Boaz willingly gave up their firstborn son to provide a redeemer for Naomi. So.
Yes, that is amazing. Good. All right.